All right, welcome everyone. Today we're going to be diving deep into something you use every single day.
Oh, this is exciting. What is it?
We're going to be talking about subject-verb agreement, which might sound a little dry at first.
Yeah, grammar can sometimes feel that way.
Right. But the thing is, this isn't just about memorizing rules. It's about unlocking this
A
superpower.
superpower. Okay. I like where this is going.
Yeah, so the power to use English clearly, precisely, and, not make those embarrassing
But we
mistakes.
all make them, let's be honest.
Well, yeah, even native speakers all the time. So we're going to be looking at this really great guide.
Oh, cool. What guide is it?
It's actually designed specifically for English learners, but honestly, I think there's something in here for everyone.
I'm ready to learn.
Okay, so let's start with the what. What exactly is subject-verb agreement?
Well, in the simplest terms, it's making sure your verbs match your subjects. So singular subjects need singular verbs,
Okay,
like she walks to work. And plural subjects need plural verbs, so like they walk to work.
okay, so it's kind of like matching your socks.
Exactly. You don't want to wear one striped sock and one polka dot sock. It just doesn't look right.
That's a great way to put it. So we have the basics, but I'm sure it gets a lot more complicated.
Oh, you bet. We've got rules, exceptions, tricky situations galore.
Well, all right, I'm ready. Let's dive into those rules.
Okay, let's start with subjects that are joined by conjunctions. You know, words like and, or nor.
Okay,
When subjects are connected by and, they usually act as a plural unit.
makes sense.
So you'd use a plural verb like the cat and the dog are playing in the yard.
Right, two subjects, plural verb. Got it.
But here's where it gets tricky. Sometimes those subjects connected by and actually represent a single entity.
Ooh, okay. How so?
Well, think of it this way, like macaroni and cheese is my comfort food.
Right.
It looks plural, but it's really describing just one dish.
So macaroni and cheese is acting as one unit.
Exactly. So it takes a singular verb.
Wow, that's so interesting how, our brains kind of trick us sometimes.
You really do. And that's why subject-verb agreement is so important.
It's like those subtle details that can really trip you up, especially if you're trying to, sound really smart in your writing.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine writing a restaurant review and getting that wrong. It could totally undermine your credibility.
Okay, so we've got and. What about or and nor?
Well, with or nor, if both subjects are singular, the verb stays singular.
Right.
For instance, neither the rain nor the snow stops the mail.
Okay, even though they're two things, rain and snow, they're both singular.
Exactly. So the verb stops has to be singular too.
So what if one is singular and one is plural?
Ah, that's where the proximity rule comes in.
Proximity rule.
Yeah, the verb should agree with the subject that's closest to it.
Oh, interesting.
So you could have either the students or the teacher is responsible
Okay.
versus either the teacher or the students are responsible.
So it all comes down to who's closest to the verb.
Exactly.
I feel like that could lead to some awkward sentences if you're not careful.
It definitely can.
Yeah.
You always want to make sure your sentences sound natural and clear, even if it means restructuring them a bit.
Okay, good tip. Now, what about those tricky words that end in S but are actually singular?
Ah, yes. English loves to throw those curveballs at us.
It does.
Words like physics, news, or mathematics might look plural, but they're actually singular concepts.
Right, they describe one thing.
So you'd say physics is my favorite subject, not are.
Okay, physics is. Got it.
And it's not just those academic subjects.
What else?
Think of words like politics, economics, or even measles.
Right, those all end in S.
But they take singular verbs, like measles is a highly contagious disease.
It's fascinating how one little letter can make all the difference. Okay, before we move on, what about collective nouns?
Ah, yes, those can be tricky.
Like team or family.
Exactly. They can be singular or plural depending on the context. If the group is acting as a single unit, it's singular. Like the team is winning the championship.
Right.
But if the members are acting individually, it's plural. So it'd be like the team are arguing about strategy.
Okay, I remember struggling with those in school. It just feels weird to think of a group of people as singular.
I know. It can be counterintuitive. But it all comes down to the context and how the group is being portrayed in that specific sentence.
It's like you really have to understand the nuance of what's being said.
Exactly. You have to read between the lines and figure out what the true meaning is.
You know, now that we're talking about this, I'm starting to notice subject-verb agreement everywhere.
I know, right? It's like you've unlocked a new level of awareness.
I'm ready for more. Are you ready to tackle some of those really tricky situations?
Bring it on. Let's unravel some more of these grammatical mysteries. Okay, so we've talked about some basic rules, but are you ready for some real brain twisters?
Oh, I'm definitely ready for a challenge. Hit me with your best shot.
All right, let's talk about quantities and measurements. Those can be a real curveball.
Oh, yeah, I've definitely stumbled over those before, like when you're talking about money or time or something like that.
Exactly. Often, even if they look plural, you actually treat them as singular.
Okay, wait, can you give me an example?
Sure, like $5 is all I have left.
$5 is, hmm, I see what you mean. That sounds a little strange, but I guess it's correct.
It is. You're thinking about the $5 as one single amount, not five individual dollars.
So is there ever a time when you would use a plural verb with a quantity?
There are a few exceptions, yeah. Usually when you're emphasizing the individual items within that quantity, like $5 were scattered on the floor.
Ah, okay, so there you're focusing on each separate dollar bill.
Exactly. It's subtle, but those little shifts in emphasis can change the whole grammatical structure.
Wow, that's really interesting. Okay, so what other tricky situations do we need to watch out for?
Let's see. Well, we have to talk about inverted sentences.
Inverted sentences. Those sound intimidating.
They're not so bad once you get the hang of them. It's just when the subject comes after the verb, like in questions.
Oh, right. Like, where are my keys?
Exactly. Keys is plural, so are is the correct verb. Or, like, what is the meaning of life?
Meaning is singular, so we use is. I see. So even when the word order is flipped around, the subject-verb agreement rule still applies.
Absolutely. It's like a fundamental law of grammar. It doesn't matter how you twist the sentence around.
That's a good way to think about it. Okay, I'm feeling pretty confident about those inverted sentences now. What else you got?
Right. How about this one? When a gerund, that's a verb ending in ing, but acting as a noun, is the subject of the sentence, it always takes a singular verb.
A gerund. Okay, remind me, what's a gerund again?
It's like, it's a word that looks like a verb because it ends in ing, but it's actually acting as a noun in the sentence.
Oh, right. Okay, so like swimming is my favorite form of exercise.
Exactly. Swimming is the subject, but it's a singular noun, so it takes the singular verb is.
Gotcha. So it's not just about the word itself, it's about what role it's playing in the sentence.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that can really trip people up because you see that ing ending and you automatically think verb.
I know. It's like our brains are wired to make those connections, but it's cool to be able to like break those patterns and see the grammar working beneath the surface.
It really is. Okay, ready for another one?
Yeah, bring it on.
Let's talk about indefinite pronouns.
Indefinite pronouns. Okay, those sound a little mysterious.
They can be a bit tricky, but they're super common. We're talking about words like each, everyone, anyone, somebody.
Oh, right. Words that refer to people, but you don't know exactly who.
Exactly. Now, here's the thing. Even though they might refer to more than one person, grammatically, they're considered singular.
Wait, really? But they're talking about multiple people?
I know, it seems counterintuitive, but that's just how they function in English grammar. So you'd say, everyone is welcome, not everyone are welcome.
Okay, so even though it feels like you're talking about a group, you use the singular verb.
Exactly, because everyone is being treated as one single unit.
Wow, I'm starting to realize that subject-verb agreement is way more nuanced than I ever thought. There are so many layers to it.
It really is. But you know what? The more you learn about these nuances, the more you start to appreciate the complexity and the beauty of the English language.
I completely agree. And honestly, I'm kind of having fun with this. It's like solving a puzzle, figuring out how all the pieces fit together.
That's a great way to look at it. And the more you practice, the better you'll get at solving these grammar puzzles. You'll start to notice patterns and develop an intuition for what sounds right.
I'm already starting to see subject-verb agreement errors everywhere, like in articles I read, in signs, even in things people say.
It's like you've opened up a whole new world. And the best part is, now that you're aware of these errors, you can start to correct them.
Exactly. I feel like I have this newfound power to make the world a grammatically correct place.
Well, maybe not the whole world, but at least you're writing.
That's a good start. So how do we actually make sure we're avoiding these errors in our own writing and speaking? Like, it seems like there's so much to remember.
That's a great question. And you're right, it can feel a bit overwhelming at first. But luckily, our guide gives us some awesome tips for mastering subject-verb agreement. We can turn those tips into something a little more actionable.
Okay, yeah, I like that. Like tips we can actually use in our everyday lives.
Exactly. So first up, we need to identify the subject. But instead of just saying that, let's think of it like this. Play detective. Hunt down the main actor in the sentence.
Ooh, I like that. It's like you're on a mission to uncover the truth.
Right. You're not just passively reading, you're actively searching for that key element that's driving the action.
And once you find that subject, you can figure out if it's singular or plural, and then choose the right verb to match. Makes sense. Okay, what's the next tip?
The next one is to, learn the common rules. But let's make it a little more fun. Think of it like learning a new dance move. Practice makes perfect.
I love that analogy. It makes grammar seem a lot less scary.
Exactly. And just like with dancing, the more you practice, the smoother and more natural those grammar moves will become.
Okay, I'm ready to hit the dance floor with subject-verb agreement. What other tips do we have?
The guide also recommends reading more, but let's rephrase that. Let's say, treat yourself to some great writing. It's like osmosis for your grammar.
Oh, that's so true. Like you just absorb those correct grammar patterns by being exposed to them.
Exactly. It's like training your ear for good grammar. And it's way more enjoyable than just drilling yourself with rules.
Agreed. So last tip.
Last but not least, we need to practice regularly. But let's make it a little more challenging. Challenge yourself. Find some online quizzes or grammar games. They can actually be pretty fun.
Grammar games. I never thought I'd say this, but you know what? I'm starting to see the appeal.
There are some really good ones out there. And they take the pressure off, so you can just have fun while you're learning.
So, to recap, our 4 actionable tips for mastering subject-verb agreement are: play detective to find the subject, think of grammar rules like dance moves, treat yourself to great writing for grammar osmosis, and challenge yourself with fun grammar practice.
That's it. It's all about making grammar engaging and something you can actually use in your everyday life.
You know, I have to admit, this deep dive has been way more eye-opening than I expected. I'm actually starting to appreciate the power of subject-verb agreement.
It's amazing how much clarity and confidence you can gain just by understanding these seemingly small details.
Absolutely. It's like unlocking a secret code to clear and effective communication. Speaking of codes, are there any final insights or thought-provoking questions we can leave our listeners with as we wrap up this deep dive?
Well, we talk about fluency a lot, and you know what comes with fluency?
What's that?
Confidence. And that's exactly what mastering subject-verb agreement gives you, right?
Totally. Like now I can express myself clearly without second-guessing every sentence.
Exactly. You know the rules, you know the exceptions, so you can just write and speak with more intention.
It's like, when you're learning a new skill and it finally clicks, it's such a good feeling.
I totally get that. Like you're no longer stumbling over your words, you're in control.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one key takeaway you hope our listeners will remember?
I think it's that subject-verb agreement. It's not about, blindly memorizing rules.
Okay, so it's more than that.
Yeah, it's more about understanding the logic behind those rules,
Okay.
and using them as tools to really create clear and concise communication.
Right, so it's about using those rules to actually improve your writing and your speaking.
Exactly. It's not about being perfect. It's about being intentional.
I love that. So it's like, don't be afraid to make mistakes, but just keep learning and keep practicing.
Exactly. And every time you encounter a tricky sentence or discover a new nuance, it's like you're adding another tool to your toolbox.
So to all our listeners out there, keep those grammar muscles flexed and embrace the challenge of really mastering the skill.
Yeah, and who knows? You might even, inspire someone else to start paying more attention to their grammar.
It's contagious. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
It was great having you. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this journey into the fascinating world of subject-verb agreement. See you next time.